Catherine, your Butterfield, and I'm, let's see, what's in Patel Jama.
Patel Jame.
Patel Jame, okay. And so what we usually do is we usually spend a little bit of time just introducing us so that you know who we are.
Absolutely.
And we need to, Lindsay, can you just click on that? Got it, so it goes away on the screen. Thank you.
It is tedious.
Okay, there we go. And we may have other Zoom people entering at some point, but
I'll grab the joint, the meeting. I'll get that.
Oh, thank you.
so do we want to start with the Zoom people introducing themselves? Kim and Laura. Kim?
There she is.
Sorry, it just took me a second to unmute. Hi, I am Kim Reed, and I've been at St. Mark's since 1993 when we moved here. And have husband, 2 kids, and we're really excited to hear from you today. Thank you.
And Laura?
And I'm Laura, and I run the Zoom meeting. And for a minute there, I thought Kim was going to tell us she had 2 husbands, and that was going to be an interesting thing. But I am also extremely excited to hear from you. So this is going to be wonderful. Thank you for being here.
And let's start with Lindsay and come around this way and just introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name's Lindsay. I've been going to St. Mark's for about 8 years with my family, and I've been to the Ahmadiyya Mosque a few times, and I've always felt just so welcomed and happy there. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for coming.
I'm Naomi. I've been here since the 26th of December. This is week 8. So far, so good.
We haven't turned her off yet.
Yeah, that's about, we've got a whole lot else to say.
And you live in Wheaton,
I
right?
do live in Wheaton, yes, on the south side of the tracks, but I've been out here in the western suburbs a long time, and I know about how awful the train is. Oh, definitely, absolutely.
Trains.
Trains, I know.
The one that ends just as the other
So,
one beginning, yeah.
This is the first time I've been on the south side. It's wonderful. I feel so hooray when I could just turn the corner and
Yeah,
get my
yeah.
house.
Yep.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
My name is Sue Crossan-Knudsen. I've been here for many years, but I'm an 8 o'clocker. So for those of you who are later services, the early risers get here at 8. So I'm looking forward to whatever you can share.
I'm Diane Dins. I've been here too long for it even to tell you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
I'm Edna Hetherington. I've been here since 2009, and I've been impressed by how many Muslims are in this part of the western suburbs, how many mosques there are.
I'm Joyce Fletcher, and I've been at St. Mark's for 22 years, and and I'm on pretty much every committee at the church.
Everything except buildings and grounds and the men's committee. Everything else, she's on it. I'm David Fletcher, a native of Chicago, Illinois, and now lived in Wheaton for many years. And I've retired this year as teaching philosophy. As I told Joyce, I'm a retired professor, but I'm not a retired philosopher. So just last night I was dropping knowledge bombs on you.
That's what you say.
Right, yeah. Emphasis on bomb.
Yeah. So and we're very happy you're here.
I'm Lois Sheridan. I've lived in the Wheaton area for 60 years, and I have 15 grandkids, and they all call me the train magnet.
I live on the other side, and they all say, don't think about Nanny or a train will come. And sure enough, the gates go down, and we sit there, and nothing happens. And the gates go back up, and they just laugh. They say, see, even if a train doesn't come, you're stuck on it. But welcome.
I am Joshua O'Shea, Josh. I've been here going on 6 years. I'm also the young adult librarian at the public library here in town. And Ibu Patel, as you probably might know, is coming to Glenbard West. He's an alum, and he's doing like the Interfaith Youth Action Corps. He worked for, the Clinton administration. So I love it. I'm a theology junkie, and one of my biggest kind of watershed moments was this guy named Miroslav Volf.
Oh, yeah.
Right, who wrote Allah, which is arguing for not only a theological like umbrella, but also social action cooperation for Christians and Muslims around the world. So I'm super happy you're here. Let's hear what you say.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me here. Appreciate the invitation by Reverend Smith, and I've known him for several years now through his work with our imam and just a lot of interfaith type of events that we've had in the past. But as Joyce mentioned, my name is Iftekar Ahmed. I was actually born in Oak Lawn and grew up in Glen Ellen, graduate of Westfield Elementary. And right after around that time, my family moved to Southwest Michigan and did high school and stuff. And then I went to University of Michigan for undergrad and did all my medical training in Detroit. And then in 2010, I came back here, which I think was always an eventuality. It's hard to escape or get away from kind of where you're from. And it helped that my parents were in Naperville too. And I took a job in Rockford and actually lived in Rockford for several years, and quickly realized that as much as I loved the job, it was too far from my parents and it was too far from my mosque. And so I moved to Barrington about 6 or 7 years ago. I am married. I have 3 sons, ranging from 5 to 11. And that's if you ask what my hobbies are, I got 3 sons. There's really no time for much else.
Can I interrupt you
Sure.
just for a second?
No problem.
Because I want to say that you're welcome to leave your mask on, but we also have, if a speaker is comfortable removing their mask, sometimes people can hear better.
that's
So it's
fine.
up to you. But I just
That's
thought I'd
That's-
mention that.
Sure, no, not a problem at all.
Because sometimes with Zoom and in the room, it's.
Yeah, no.
Can we
And
take
if
them off,
anybody
too? No,
online
leave
can't
ours
hear
on.
me, just let me know, please. I'll try to speak louder. In terms of my involvement with the Amity Muslim community here in Glen Ellen, so I currently serve as the Director of Public Affairs, and I've been in that position since I think 2014. Focusing on relationships with community organizations, churches, government officials, things like that, letting them know about who we are, what we stand for. But historically, for this area, let me take a big step back, actually. The Amity Muslim community. So we are Muslims who believe in the Messiah. And essentially in the Quran, it says that there will be a second coming. Somebody who will come to reestablish the original teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And we believe that person came in the late 1800s in India by the name of Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. And through him, he brought the focus back to the core teachings of Islam, because it was felt that it was just, we always say that the religion is perfect. There's nothing wrong with the religion. It's the people that follow the religion that are very imperfect. And so he came to reform the people, not the religion. I think that's a key point to make. And since that time, our community has grown to tens of millions in the world. Now, in terms of the United States, our first missionary or mom actually came in the late 1900, or actually 1920 to Chicago. And we actually just celebrated our 100 years in America, our centennial in 2020, which coincided with COVID. That was just a bad coincidence. We had big plans for 2020, and we ended up doing a lot of it on Zoom. But he actually founded one of the oldest mosques in the United States, actually in downtown Chicago. It's in the Bronzeville neighborhood. So the Ahmadi Muslim community has existed in the United States since 1920, and mainly in large cities, larger centers. And in Chicago, it has existed since that time, but kind of wasn't as active for certain periods of time. Now, I would say in the 70s, we saw an influx of people coming from what is now Pakistan, which is where my parents are from. And, it started off with a handful of families and slowly grew. In the early 80s, when I was in Glen Ellen, living actually very near where the mosque is now, my father was the president of our chapter at that time, which wasn't very big. And at that time, it was 1983 or 84 when we purchased the property in where the mosque is right now. And then in 2004 was when the mosque that you see today was completed. So the mosque that's there now is almost close to 20 years old. And since that time, our congregation has grew. So, we're a couple thousand in the Chicago area if you combine the city, suburbs, and things like that. So,
How far do you think people drive to get to your mosque? For services?
Well, before I moved, Rockford.
Yeah.
I can tell you that because I used to make that drive.
Yeah.
But right now, we have one family a couple families in Indiana.
Okay.
Who continue to come, and part of that is because they were part of our community before they moved, and you tend to have a connection with the congregation, if you're with them a long time. So even though I lived in Michigan and then I lived in Detroit, this has really always been my mosque. I've always, even when I was in Detroit, I would go to the Detroit mosque, but for the bigger events, I'd try to come home and be with my family, and so. That's kind of how we did it. So that's a little bit of a background of myself and our community here in the Chicago area. Our motto, the Ahmadi Muslim community worldwide, our motto is love for all, hatred for none. And that's a term that, basically focuses on the fact that we know we're all different. We know that sometimes we don't follow the same beliefs, but that we are accommodating to everybody's views. So even if I may disagree with a viewpoint if somebody has, I accept the fact that you believe it, and I don't, dislike you because of it. And our founder, in the late 80s, had coined a term called jihad of the pen.
Yeah.
So we heard this term jihad, and you always think holy war, right? That's always what everybody says. And the truth of the matter is the word jihad comes from a word that means to strive for, to struggle. And so there's really no connotation that says it's a war. It's just, like I said, to strive, to struggle. And he coined this term jihad of the pen to say, the time for fighting about religion is over. Now it's the time to become educated about religion, to write books, to give lectures, to communicate with people of other faiths, to try to at least spread our message in terms of this is who we are, this is what we stand for. What somebody decides to do, they follow their heart, and there's no compulsion in that. There's no compulsion in religion. But our job would be to, like I said, educate, to let people know who we are and what we stand for.
I've always loved the word jihad because it does mean struggle and strive. And I feel like American culture is fairly violent. And we say fight the good fight when we mean struggle the good struggle. But the word jihad actually means struggle. It's actually a very beautiful word. So.
Yeah, I felt the same way about the term spiritual warfare that like a lot of Christian evangelicals tend to use. It's like it's got that same problem. And I feel that's also been interpreted and or used poorly to actually transfer to Christian violence by using spiritual warfare as a term. So I feel
Yeah, the word war in Arabic is totally different. So, yeah.
And the one thing we always, like I said, no compulsion religion is that our belief is no one has a monopoly on salvation. I can't make any predictions about any of you just as much as you can make a prediction about me. It's the Lord will make the decision on what our eventuality will be for all of us based on our deeds and what we've done, good and bad. But for me to sit and say that, oh, so-and-so doesn't believe in this, or they're going to hell, that's not my place. And to be honest, isn't anybody's place. That's how we feel.
So we've had splits within our tradition, within even and at the point we're at, we all resonate with what you're saying. No compulsion, lots of different beliefs. We can meet under the same roof, but at the same time, there's always a focal point where you kind of have to choose within a congregation or within a community. Are we going to do this? Or are we going to do that? How does that work with you?
So it's a good question. Islam obviously, as large of a religion as it's very broken up, for lack of a better term. I mean, there's over 70 different sects in the whole world. And there's the main breakup, the Shia and the Sunni, where the majority are Sunni and follow that after the death of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, there was a succession of 4 Khalifas, is what we call them. And the Shias believe in that, but they don't believe that the correct, they believe that Hazrat Ali was first because he was related to the Holy Prophet, so he should have been the first one. But again, majority are Sunni. And then, when you look at all the others, I mean, it's small differences in terms of how they worship, in terms of what they feel are, requirements of faith versus what we call sunnah, which is, what people should do.
Do rather than believe?
Believe and do.
Okay.
Both. I mean, actions and beliefs. Yeah. And so those are the kind of things that separate us now. We try to keep it relatively simple in that, you believe in, the 5 pillars of Islam and you believe in the oneness of God, and that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a messenger of God. And that's really the basic first thing you have to believe. Even our sect of Islam is not without challenges, meaning that, we're not, like I said, we're in the tens of millions, we're not in the hundreds of millions. God willing, we'll be there one day. But there's a lot of belief, mainstream, or whatever you want to call it, that people who don't believe we're Muslims at all. As that sounds kind of shocking. But just to give you an example, in the country of Pakistan, for instance, we're not considered Muslim.
Wow.
And to the point that I still question. I mean, and I'm the one, and I've known it my whole life, and I still have that look when I say it because it sounds ridiculous. But there was an ordinance actually passed, deeming us in the 70s, it was 1974, that said that we are not considered Muslim, and their reasoning is that we believe in another prophet. Meaning, after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that somebody else came. And the truth of the matter is that he is not really a new prophet, but he is a subordinate prophet, if you want to call it that, meaning that he is reinforcing the same message that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought. And that's why we call him the promised reformer, because he came to reform the Muslims who needed reforming.
And I bet as Protestants, right, we'd argue this is what Luther did, this is
Sure.
what, the Church of England did. So, yeah, that totally makes sense. But there would be other Christians who would say, we're not Christian, whether they're evangelicals or Roman Catholics, or people who don't think that, queer people should be in the church, etc. Like, so unfortunately, that makes total sense to me. That you're not.
The thing about being here, I mean, and a lot of people who are in America now, originally, like, came, one of the reasons they left Pakistan was for that reason. And even our spiritual head. So we currently have what we call a Khalifa, which is our spiritual head. And he's the 5th successor of the promised Messiah. He now resides in London. And up until 1984. So 1984, the government of Pakistan took it a step further and said that not only are you not Muslim, but you can be arrested for praying.
Yeah.
You can be arrested for saying Assalamu alaikum, which is peace be with me, which is our hello. And in 1984, at that time, our 4th successor, he was in Pakistan at the time, and he had to leave the country because if not, he would have been arrested. And jailed.
That's not true now.
No, it's still that way.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I have relatives who have been in jail as recent as in the last.
Is that because you're mainly Sunni, or is that?
No, it's because we believe in the Messiah, that Messiah has returned.
But don't all Muslims believe that?
So no, so the interesting, I'm glad you brought up this point. The interesting thing is that even though this is what we're accused of, why we're accused of not being Muslim, in essence, they're still waiting for the second coming. So our question always is that when that happens, isn't that this? I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of hypocritical. You guys are waiting for something we think happened, yet you're calling us non-Muslim for that. It's gotten to a point in Pakistan where they destroy our mosques. They put people in jail, and people have been murdered.
Yeah.
Many people have, and it's
That's just bad as Christianity, for goodness sake.
there's no monopoly on ignorance.
Right.
I'll tell you that right now at all.
There you go.
And it's unfortunate that people disagreement can lead to that. And one of the great things about this country is you have freedom of conscience, and here we can have a mosque, we can pray every day, we can say Assalamu alaikum, we can promote ourselves, and it's okay.
You get a lot of people that do terrible things like putting signs up or not wanting you to put a mosque there.
It happens. In other communities, we've had resistance sometimes towards plans to build a mosque, things of that initially, but I don't remember a time when we had a plan to do something and we weren't able to fulfill it. Meaning that eventually, by continuing to talk with the community, having good relationships with the community, that love conquers all, in that regard. And here in this area, like I said, I grew up in Glen Ellen, my early years, and obviously been part of this community. I don't recall a real significant issue ever coming up. We've had big events at the mosque, and we've never had anybody really have a problem with it. We have neighbors obviously on both sides, and sometimes little things come up, but it's never a "who are you" people kind of thing. It's more of a "please don't park there." You know what I mean? And that's okay. That I'm okay with. As a homeowner, I can understand that. But it's not, it's never been a real discriminatory type of thing. And part of it is that's not who we are. And we try to be part of the community. And that's one of the tenets of Islam, is that you're loyal to your country. That's a tenet of Islam, loyalty to your country. And that goes all the way down to your community. And so, me being here, me being involved with your congregation, that's not just good community relations, that's part of my faith.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
we are asked to do this. And so we try to have good relationships, again, with different congregations and also with government officials. I mean, we have a really good relationship with the village board. We have a great relationship with the police, the DuPage County Sheriff. I mean, and it's because we want just them to know who we are and we're here to help and things like that.
Are there enough people like you doing this? Or are there- I
There
mean,
could always be more.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I mean, so you're being effective.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is effective. I think people who know our community or know our mosque know that, oh, you guys are the ones who did this, or you guys are the ones who did this. So every year we actually have a blood drive in honor of 9/11. And I know that sounds
Wow.
kind of
No.
interesting to a lot of people, it may.
Sure.
But we started this, it was in 2011. It was the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. And we felt like we needed to do something because the truth of the matter is that, yeah, it's not who we are, but what are we doing to combat what
Yeah.
people think of us?
Yeah.
That still does fall on us. And so we started nationally, we started this thing called Muslims for Life. And we do a blood drive on Capitol Hill, actually, every year since 2011.
Wow.
And now we do it at our all our community mosques around that time as well. And so our thought is, you give back to the community, and it is symbolic, obviously, but that's what we have to do, and that's fine. I think it's the right thing to do.
It's a very Christian thing to do
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yep.
I find it very interesting and expansive for my own thinking to hear what you have to say about your religion. But I'm typically come from a very personal point of view for just about everything. As a cancer survivor myself since 2006, I'm intrigued that you are a radiation oncologist. Is that correct?
Correct.
I did look this up.
That's fine.
No problem.
Yeah.
And so I did want to meet you. Glad you took your mask off in case I ever need you. Yes, cancer people are always worried it'll come back because
Absolutely.
it can
Absolutely.
It does.
easily.
Correct.
I have a question.
Sure.
When I, in my cancer treatment, I was fortunate to be at Northwestern after a rather questionable experience at Delmar. And I met with Dr. I forgot his name all of a sudden, Gordon, a wonderful Jewish man. And as I think, he was very, very kind, extremely kind, such as I had not seen except from the nurses.
Mm.
Yes, praise be to them. As I look back on it, you think, oh, I'm still here.
Right,
Sure.
Come back yet, that was
Yeah.
just a cold.
right.
I think he really did show the love of God to me. I don't think I recognized it at the time, but in looking back. And so I wonder, would you be open to sharing any experience where you may have received the love of God through your work or given it? Maybe you didn't know it at the time, but when you think of it, that would resonate with me. I like to see universal.
Sure. No, it's a really good question. So, my faith is a big part of my work in that. I pray we pray 5 times a day, but I
Yes.
specifically pray every day before work. I pray before I see every patient,
Yeah.
even if it's a short prayer. And I pray for their treatment, and I tell them that. I always tell patients that, everything comes from God in terms of, they're saying, oh, thank you. Well, it's really God's doing. And I really believe that. I have been blessed in a lot of ways, but I didn't accomplish
Right.
where I am right now. I worked hard, sure, but God gave me the opportunities, God gave me the knowledge, God gave me everything.
Mhm.
And, I've had situations where cases, if you want to call them, or patients who it was very challenging, or the prognosis wasn't good.
Yeah.
And our chances weren't good. And I knew that. And they knew that too. I'm always very honest and straightforward with them. But I prayed very hard in certain cases. And some of the results are miraculous. They really are. I can't the science, I can't explain it with science.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in luck.
Yeah.
And I've prayed with patients even
Do you?
together. Yeah. And we're obviously, and I don't,
Non-Muslim?
oh yeah, non-Muslims all the time. All the
Okay.
time. Well, you and that's the thing, relationships with God are, we're part of a congregation. We, go to a mosque, go to a church,
Yeah.
you go to a synagogue, but your relationship with God is personal
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And so, I work in a Catholic hospital.
Oh,
Just so you
okay,
know.
yes. all right.
And before every meeting that we do, a group meeting, there's a prayer.
Mhm.
And I am in a couple positions where I have to lead some of these meetings. And I do prayers from the Quran. And they're okay with it. Because the words are about healing, or the words are, about positive things. Prayer is prayer, so a lot of times with patients,
We're
we'll
still talking the same person.
exactly. Exactly. So we both,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll bow our heads
Yeah.
and we pray in our own way, and Amen is Amen, and we're done.
Do you think that could happen in another hospital?
I
mean,
think it
let's
can.
just
I don't
say,
think it has to be a Catholic hospital.
Would
I just
you
using
be
that
able
as
to
an
do that?
example.
As a,
Yeah.
whatever hospital,
I
it's
wonder.
not Catholic,
Yeah.
it's not.
It does,
religiously
because I
oriented.
know of other physicians, Muslim physicians, who work in non-Catholic hospitals who also
They do the same?
Really?
do the same.
Oh,
They do
I'm
the
so
same.
That's
glad
encouraging.
to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that-
hard to know, really,
Sure.
it's hard, it is, because it's so
No, I
non-personal.
no, I completely understand. It's interesting. If you look at like the major religions of the world, I think like 80 or 90% of them are the same in terms of the
Yeah.
beliefs.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, maybe it's human nature. We tend to focus on that 10 or 20% that's different.
Sure.
And we just kind of nod at that.
Yeah.
And my thought is, why don't we stick with what's the same and kind of work on that, and grow a relationship
And
with
the other
that.
thing that I've also been, it's come home to me from a number of different sources, but especially with Bell Hooks, her book Teaching Community. Like those, you can cherish those differences. It's good. It's good that I'm Christian and that you're Muslim.
Sure.
It's good that there is a differentiation, because that brings enrichment. So it's almost like it doubles down what you're saying. Let's focus on what unites us, and also we're different, and that's a good thing, and we can cooperate. It's like we can have our cake and eat it too.
Absolutely.
Good cake.
Yeah.
Something just kind of struck me there. What's cake? Yeah.
Well, when I worked at Marion Joy, it was still under the Wheaton Franciscans. Now it's part of Northwestern.
Sure.
But body, mind, spirit was the mantra.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
they didn't have pews or anything in their chapel because they wanted people to be able to come in and put a towel down or do whatever. They did not have any crucifixes in any of the rooms.
Really?
And the head of the spiritual care department wasn't even Catholic. I mean, they had all kinds of doctors from all different faiths, and they were
That's good to know.
encouraged to do whatever their faith led them to do.
I know when I was there, I noticed in the chapel, there's a Buddha in the back of the
Oh, yeah.
corner there.
They're
Well, I think,
very
one of
open.
the things that drew me, or I guess kept me, I've been I worked at OSF, St. Anthony, so Order of St. Francis. One of the things that's kept me at my job probably all these years is that spiritual viewpoint that they bring to patient care, in that, that's the focus 100% of the time. And I've never been instructed to treat a patient a certain way, or there's some financial issue, or things like that. We take people with no insurance, and that's the kind of medicine growing up I always wanted. That's what I thought of. Oh, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I'm going to do, and that's what they allow me to do.
But you are aware that there are plenty of doctors who are not of that.
I unfortunately, I'm very, very.
Particularly in these
uh,
life and death illnesses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not always that way.
that's why I needed to ask.
No,
Because you can't, you
Perfectly
just don't
reasonable.
know.
Agree.
And in the 10 minutes you get, and
Sure.
you know,
If
you can't really,
You get
can't
10
really say,
minutes.
oh, I don't know where you come from.
I'm going to you.
That's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a reasonable question. I mean, I've had people ask me that, you know, especially around the holidays. They're like, oh, because they want to say Merry Christmas to me, but they're like, they kind of look at me. They're like, I don't know if you're the Merry Christmas kind of guy.
Yeah, it's like,
And some of them will just say it because they don't. And then some of them will just ask, like, do you celebrate Christmas? You know, like,
no,
I get a
Say
day
it to
off.
me,
I
no.
get a day off. So
Right.
it's, no arguments, you know.
I celebrate the day off.
Yeah.
And that happens, and that's okay. I mean, you know, the truth is that, you know, people are curious, people are, you know, sometimes you don't interact with people that are different than you, and that's no fault of your own. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Michigan, okay, and there were very few other people who looked like me with my name.
Mhm.
And people just didn't know what to think, you know. And yeah, you get some funny looks, and I mean, my name is Iftekar. It's not it doesn't just roll off your tongue, all right. And it is what it is. I mean, I would, you know, the only positive, my last name's Ahmad, so it's A, so it's the top. I mean, I've lost track of how many substitute teachers we'd have when they're being rolled, and they just kind of pause for a second. And I knew what they were pausing at because my name's at the top, and I just raised my hand. I'm like, I'm here. They're like, okay, thank you. And they just click and they move on. That's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, they're like I said, I mean, we're always learning. And so we'll make it work. But I mean, I've had patients who are like, oh, is this English really good? Like, I actually had a patient ask a nurse, and I quote, does he speak English? And I thought it for a second. I was just like, she really asked
I'm in the
my
room.
nurse that if I speak English or do I speak English? She's like, no, she wants to know if you speak English. And I'm like, does she realize like there's no way I could work here if I didn't speak English? Like, but it was just more of a fear response. I mean, you know, these are people who are diagnosed with cancer. They're scared, they're concerned, and there's a million things going. And so I'm not offended by that.
Your English is very good.
You know, I always tell them I'm like I was born in Chicago. I was born in Oak Lawn. Like, because people always ask, like, oh, where are you
But then
from?
where are you from?
Where are you from? And I'm like, well, how far back are we going?
Over there.
How
far back or where are you from?
Yeah, and I'm like, Quan. I'm like,
But no one will reject you because of being.
no.
I want that doctor.
I've had some people who, based on my name, weren't too excited to see me or anything like that. And I take that as a challenge. Just to remember that, you know, I mean, I'm not offended by it or insulted. I mean, to each their own. I'm not.
That's why you're good at your job.
You're right.
I mean, how many people would not be offended by that? You
Yeah.
don't know, but you're not like,
So I have a question about other Muslim communities in this area and how your community relates or doesn't
Sure,
relate with those groups, because, you know, you mentioned in Pakistan, basically you're persecuted, really.
Yes.
And so what is the feeling here?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's hit and miss. You know, we certainly reach out to other Muslim organizations, whether it's a group effort to do something or, you know, just to have a conversation. And sometimes they're receptive and sometimes they're not. And it's, again, it is what it is. I mean, we can't, you know, I remember some years ago, we had a group of high school students that part of it was Glen Bard South, and part of their, I think it was a world history or something, one of their classes, they were doing comparative religions. And so their teacher had reached out to us and we'd had them come visit several times. And so we had them come visit our mosque, gave them a little talk. The mom was there. And later that day, they went to a different mosque. And at that mosque, somebody asked the imam or whoever was giving the talk, like, oh, we went to this mosque today, like, how are you guys different? And he told them that we weren't Muslim. And he just completely just criticized us and this. And these were students, and
So you're not, you don't,
you don't have to tell me that.
But
it was
it's the same thing within
If we
Christian
go
groups
across
and
the
Christian
street, we go
denominations.
across the street, we're
I
down
mean,
the
there
road.
are
We
different,
get the
there are
same
different
thing.
groups and they don't acknowledge each other. I mean, I think that's
we all get along.
part of
I mean,
human.
But the most interesting part, or I guess entertaining part of it, was one of the students in that group was one of somebody who comes to our congregation, and he didn't, and I told him this before. I'm like, this is not the time or place to get in a, what do you call it? And like, just you be respectful of the fact that you're at their mosque, and no big deal. And what he told me was, after the session was over, a couple of high school students went up to the imam and said, we're really confused. Like, Islam is supposed to be a religion of peace. This is what we learned. And, what you're saying doesn't sound like the Islam that we heard. And the imam was kind of taken aback. And, and I think one of the kids actually said, yeah, we like that other mosque better. And I was like, see, I told you, you didn't even do anything.
Right, yep.
The truth will come out.
Oh, that's gotta make him feel so
Yeah.
good. He's like, oh man, I got my people.
Yeah, they had his back. As you say. So it's like I said, it's hit and miss. And you do the best you can. You can't control other people's feelings or what their opinions are and things like that.
If can I ask you a really basic question, which I know because I'm a professional philosopher.
Of course.
I'm
yeah.
sure what are the 5 pillars? Just briefly.
So the 5 pillars of Islam, the first is kalma, which is the belief in God and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a messenger of God. And then there's prayer, so praying 5 times a day. Zakat, which is basically alms to the poor, and it's based on a certain percentage of your accumulated wealth. So not your income, but if you have savings, things like that. Fasting, it depends. Fasting, which is the month of Ramadan, where we fast for about 30 days from sunrise to sunset, and then Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca, which is required by every able-bodied Muslim, if you're physically, financially able to, that you should do once in your lifetime.
Have you done that?
I have not. No. Certainly no plan to at some point. And there's not a lot of times people will do it later in life after they've kind of taken care of their kids, their family, things like that. I know some people who go when they're young. I mean, it's just that one time that you are going to do it. It's obviously a very spiritual trip, and some people want to be prepared for it as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'm over here.
Oh,
Sorry,
hi.
I was late.
No problem.
There was a train.
Yeah.
And it was a long, slow train.
None of us believe you at all.
Oh, now I forgot. Oh, if you were to go to Mecca, is there a way that you dress that would be different? No, because this sounds exotic, but we were in the Casablanca airport one year, and it was obviously, there was these pilgrimages of people going to Mecca, and they all had the same clothes on.
So no, that's a great question. Yeah. So the traditional, and that's one of the beauties of the fact that Islam should be all encompassing, is that when you go for the pilgrimage, it's a spiritual journey. It's not supposed to matter where you're from, who you are, what your stature is, what your job is. None of that matters. It's all about that connection with God. And so typically men will just have basically 2 cloth wrap, and that's it. It's a very basic. Women have a very basic, so that there is that unity, meaning that everybody's the
So
same.
you wouldn't have made a problem going to Mecca, surely.
I would
No one
not. No. But if you're going from Pakistan, it would be a problem. Again,
Well, they were all going from Casablanca, from Africa, so I don't know why, but I have to tell you a very funny thing.
Sure.
I think perhaps with Islam, the men were always leading the family group, whoever. But there was always the woman right behind him, tell him exactly what he needed to do. And I told my husband, I said, see, nothing changes. I don't care where you are.
So, no, it's interesting that you mentioned that. You know, in Islam, one of the things that, you know, we see, and unfortunately, again, it's not the religion, it's the people of, you know, suppression of women's rights and persecution and not getting a fair shake and things like that. But the reality is that if you look at the teachings of Islam, you look at the Quran, you really look at the sayings of the Holy Prophet or the Hadith, you know, women have a very high stature in Islam. There's a saying of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, that paradise lies under the feet of thy mother. And we teach that to the kids at a very young age. You know, there's another story about somebody, a man went to the Holy Prophet and asked him, you know, who, you know, my mom and dad, who should I respect or who should I take care of, you know, first? And he said, your mother. And he said, okay, after that, who should? And he said, your mother. The third time he asked, after that, he said, your mother. And only after the fourth time, he said, your father. So women have a very high stature in Islam, and they are protected, and you know, and that's how it's supposed to be. Again, you know, the way it's executed, unfortunately, in the majority of the world, is not how it's supposed to be. But you're right. Behind every strong man, there's a woman controlling everything, me included. So I give a lot of credit to my wife and my mom for everything in my life.
The prophet's first wife was his boss. So, I mean, yeah, the prophet's first wife
That's right.
was his boss, basically.
She was. You're right. And she was older than him, and she
Yeah.
was his boss.
Yeah.
That's correct.
He was like an accountant for her or something?
Yeah, he did. He worked with. She had businesses, and he worked with her. And he was very honest, and that's what drew her to him.
So I have another question.
Yes.
I lived in Lombard for a long time.
Okay.
And we were there when the Preparatory School of America bought the school building. Now, are the Muslim schools, are they by, like the Christian schools, you have Catholic schools, you have whatever schools. Are the Muslim schools that way too, or is there a multitude of types of Islam in that?
No, so the Muslim schools, it's going to depend on what congregation it is. Obviously, as a school, you have to follow the state guidelines in terms
Right.
of
Oh, yeah.
education. But the religious part of it, a lot of times will depend on what type of mosque it is. So one Muslim school may teach some things differently than another Muslim school. So there's not a set, you know, agenda.
This one's very conservative.
It just depends on what mosque they're affiliated with.
I really don't know. All I know now is in Lombard, there's a bunch of mosques too.
Yeah.
But it's a very conservative school.
When you said one of the 5 pillars is that you go to Mecca, if you're able, what if you're able and you do not? Does that affect your overall?
Again, being not, I mean, that's not for me to judge. You know, it's a tenet of Islam that we're supposed to fulfill. You know, by not doing it, then you know, there's a day of judgment, and
That's what it means, that there's a consequence. Okay.
that's not for me.
That-
That's not for me to say. That's not for me to say. I just know it's not a good thing. But again, not for me to say.
Does anybody on Zoom have any questions?
I'm good.
No, just want to say thank you for being here today. I hope you'll be able to come back, and that, you know, post-pandemic or soon we'll be able to visit your mosque, which I know we've all been invited to do that in the past. So thank you.
Actually, I'll give you a tentative save the date, April 9th. So April 9th, Saturday, I believe, we're going to have so every year We do an interfaith iftar during Ramadan.
Yeah.
So
right.
basically,
Been to those.
it's breaking bread together. And it takes place around sunset when we break our fast. And every year we do an interfaith, and we invite, local communities. We invite some government officials, things like that. So tentatively, that's scheduled for April 9th in person. So we'll send more information as it becomes finalized, but hope to see you all there.
Okay, now I do have a question so I can get it
So-
on the calendar. How do you spell that?
Iftar, IFTAR or IFTAAR.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Because we've got a taste of your character, I think I know the answer to this. But like, as an American, looking at the last 5 years, their and kind of trajectory, how are you feeling?
So,
And then as opposed to like America treating itself, and then like whether it's interreligious stuff
Sure.
for yourself, like
Sure.
what are you feeling?
so I've always been proud of being American.
Oh yeah,
That'll never change.
Yeah.
I am always thankful that I was born and raised here versus in Pakistan. And I thank my parents for that. That was like, I'm like, Dad, best decision you made. Coming here, no question. But certainly it's concerning. It's a little disheartening, to be honest.
Yeah.
That what I've
Yeah.
seen over the past 4 or 5, 6 years, because I know that we're better than that.
Yeah.
And the fact that saying certain things has become normalized.
Yeah,
Or
right.
saying hateful things has become normalized, and it's okay, and well, this is freedom of speech. That's fine. Freedom of I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, absolutely. But I also am a firm believer in, being cognizant of others' feelings and not being hateful either.
You can
So
say that, but should you?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think, like I said, we've seen kind of a shift where it's become okay. And quite simply, when our elected officials say certain things, if our leaders are saying it, then it makes that okay.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. It's not that, and it's not a party thing. It's not a Republican, this kind of thing. I know some people who are in the Republican Party who are ISIS, very respectful, would never condone things like this. And so it's not a party thing. It's an individual thing. And that part's a little unfortunate. I think we've, as a community, have been a little more careful because of that, whether or not it's real or not. It puts us on this heightened sense of security.
Right.
And
So what about 9/11? Didn't you have to recover from that?
So
Was it all the
9/11,
muscles of the
I think we, yes and no. I think that time heals all wounds type of thing. You can say yes, but just that whole thought of what had happened and, how Islam was portrayed after that. I don't think you recover from that. And I always, I felt it. I was in Detroit at the time when it happened. And Detroit is a very large Arab population. And so I felt good about that fact because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to really stand out. And I was happy about that. But every time I flew after that for a period of time, it was very, I had a heightened sense of security. I was concerned, absolutely. But more recently, that part hasn't been a big issue. I think it's just the decency, I guess. I think that society has lost a little bit of kind of common decency. I mean, we actually had an incident. This is not too long. I mean, it was pre-pandemic, but it was probably 18, maybe this happened at our mosque where we were finishing it was during Ramadan, I think, because it was later at night. And this pickup truck with American flag and 2 American flags, really big ones, just tore through our parking lot really loud. And there was kids yelling and this, that. Now, they were just ignorant kids. But would that have happened you know, 2-3 years before that? Probably not. That's the thing that bothered me more than
Right.
anything.
Yep.
And then I called our now Republican sheriff, Jim Mendrick,
Mhm.
friends with, and I told him, hey, this is what happened. Can you look into it? And yeah, within an hour, he figured out who it was. And he went to their house and he had to talk with their parents.
Yeah.
So it's
I've
not,
seen
so
that truck, yeah.
yeah, so this isn't, like I said, it's not a
Right,
partisan
it
thing,
is,
it's a
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's good people with different political
Oh, yeah.
ideology.
Yeah.
It's just that, you know, you wanna treat people, like you said, not that you can say, but should you say it?
Yeah.
And I think that we need to kind of go back and just treat people, you know, go back to the golden rule, which is very old fashioned, but it works, so.
Well, I think you said that your community believes in love for all,
hatred.
hatred for none. And I think that that, you know, is so reflected in how you are. I mean, I really think that that shines through you and that we've
Very much so.
all seen that today. And I think that that, to me, that's very moving, you know, and
Appreciate that.
I think your patients are so privileged to have you
Yeah.
as their doctor.
Those people say, so.
And we're privileged here in Glen Ellen to have you as a neighbor.
Right.
Thank you very much. We feel the same. We've,
Yeah.
you know, over the years, we've had such good relationships with a lot of congregations, but St. Mark's in particular. And, you know, George has always been very open to working with us and us with him. And so.
Well, in hearing you talk, I started thinking of that Maya Angelou
Mhm.
poem that says, "We are more alike, my friend, than we are unalike." And I think that that's such a good thing for us to remember with any person that we're encountering, you know, and I really appreciate your sharing with us.
I'm very happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, Laura, do I need to go ahead and move Zoom on over?
I am sorry. Yeah, Zoom does need to take off so we can get ready for the 10:30. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. That was wonderful. And see y'all soon. Thanks.
They leave and we.
You guys-
Yeah, you guys get to stay. Fine. Play